Welcome to another episode of Mission Compliance, Unleashing Growth Potential for Defense Contractors. Today, we're tackling one of the most talked about challenges in compliance, meeting CMMC requirements when developing custom code for defense contracts. Yes, you heard me. Whether you're building next-gen aerospace software or securing the back end of critical defense platforms, you need to comply with CMMC requirements, and that can feel like trying to win an Olympic marathon on your first training run. Okay, so developing custom code within the world of defense contracts isn't just about brilliant lines of code, it's about keeping things locked down like Fort Knox while navigating CMMC Level 2 and beyond. But here's the catch. Developers often focus on functionality first, leaving security checks for later, something Uncle Sam does not appreciate when assessing your compliance stance. Here's why CMMC compliance can feel so complex in this context. Every function, data exchange, and even how your software team collaborates needs to be secure, with processes in place to protect controlled unclassified information, or CUI for short. Trust me when I say you don't want CUI leaking like a rusty submarine.
Oh, I like that one. I like that one.
We're joined once again today by Mike Frieder, president of On-Call Compliance Solutions and a CMMC professional assessor. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman.
So, Mike, as you may have noticed from that lengthy introduction, this week we're talking about building custom code in defense. And this might not be the most obvious topic, but there are people out there that build code for their work or for their software. So this is a very important topic. So we are talking about custom code. What does CMMC say about ensuring security during custom software development?
Yeah, so there's a lot about developing custom code that gets talked about. Number one is the in the later control families, they begin to really address software development techniques and how you're architecting how you're architecting things, right? So 3.13.2, for instance, is employee architectural designs, software development techniques, and systems engineering principles that promote effective information security within organizational systems. So, look, a lot of companies are developing code in the defense industry. I'll give you a couple examples. Those companies who are generating G code for CNC machines, right? All the precision machining stuff, they have to develop code to develop the part. That code needs to be protected, and it needs to be developed in a safe, secure manner. So how you're storing the code, where's the repository, version control, all those things can be addressed here. And the overall architecture you're using to deal with custom code. That custom code is definitely CUI. It's controlled technical information, and it's of high value to our enemies. So the techniques that you're using to store and protect that information are critical, but then also the development techniques. Are you using development techniques that are safe from things like injection attacks, attacks that maybe, for instance, in our industry, the Great Kaseya attack, where they injected a bad update into a version of the software and actually got Kaseya to go out there and distribute it legitimately as an update to their program. I mean, that is mighty scary, mighty scary. And so you've got to have controls over that stuff. Of course, making sure that from a long-term perspective, that custom code is safe, is run through compilers and debuggers, and is not going to wind up doing malicious things or going to wreck the machines that they run on. All of those things have to be identified and documented as a part of your CMMC certification plan, and also your NIST compliance. So again, 3.13.2 is a really big control for this. And if you're developing custom code, it's not just as simple as using GitHub. I'll tell you, we run GitHub Enterprise a lot, and GitHub Enterprise natively is not compliant. But when GitHub Enterprise is run in the Azure government cloud, all of a sudden it's in the government cloud, and so it's okay. So we run into a lot of folks who are using GitHub, and certainly GitHub should not just be used in the public cloud willy-nilly, where you're going to create and store and manage defense-related items. that then all of a sudden foreign technical support can have access to. Scary stuff. Don't want to do it. Violates ITAR. Violates a lot of other things. Apparently, my iPad really feels personal about this one. Hang on a second. I've never
It's
seen
a
my iPad do that.
it's a cyber attack.
Definitely not a cyber attack, but it does remind you that somebody's listening no matter where you are. So yeah, it's it's definitely um, a very important part of security that is oftentimes overlooked because a lot of times, especially developers, they're what I call contrarian thinkers, right? They're folks who really are very bright and they think in ways that run counter to the grain. And that's what a lot of times makes them good and innovative programmers. But unfortunately, if you're going to work in the defense industry, you're going to have to go with the flow with what you're developing. You're going to have to use best practices and safe techniques and document exactly how you're doing what you're doing. It's mission critical for success here. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary.
How can defense contractors leverage role-based access control or RBAC when developing custom code?
Great question. Really good question. You start to get into the nitty-gritty of who's got access to what. And we know that NIST functions on the principle of least privilege. To prove principle of least privilege, we have to have role-based access control in order to designate who's got access to what. Who has access to your code repositories? It's very important. Not just anybody should have access to those. Honestly, some IT admins probably shouldn't even have access to code repositories. So code repositories maybe need to be run by code administrators, and they may need to be in an external environment or an isolated environment where even IT admins shouldn't have access to them. Again, every client that we deal with is different. And we deal with a lot of them that deal with custom code and programming and things like that. And every different system is something that needs to be looked at on an individual basis for security. So in some cases, we use RBAC or role-based access control to keep the people in who have the need to know what's going on in there, a principle of needing to know, and also supporting the principle of least privilege. All of that needs to really be supported. And yeah, it's just kind of one of those things that role-based access control is the fundamental way to deal with this.
Absolutely. So, what kind of documentation do developers need to support CMMC compliance?
Yeah, so the first document that I think is necessary is we need an architectural design document that defines the development environment. An assessor is going to want to understand the environment that you're developing code in. If you're using GitHub within Azure Government, great. We want to define that. We want to say, hey, listen, no custom code should be developed outside of that environment. Very much like you wouldn't want to take defense information and drop it into Dropbox. You don't want custom code to wind up being developed on somebody's desktop at home that may not be compliant. And this is a big one to fight. Again, developers are they're not 9 to 5 guys a lot of times. They're gonna be the guys that are gonna probably pull some heavy hours, or they may like to work at night and kind of be like nocturnal almost. Coding is best done when it's quiet, not when the office is busy. So, from that perspective, I think that's a very important thing for managers to really understand is you can't have your folks doing, defense-related custom code and development on a non-compliant machine. And then you've got, information traversing back into the corporate network, and that can create its own challenges. So yeah, it can turn into a mess very, very quickly. Tell me what the original question was one more time. I know that was a point I wanted to make, and I think there's more.
The original question was what kind of documentation do developers need to support CMMC compliance?
Yeah, thank you for that. So we want to document, the environment. We want to make sure that our folks are trained up on that and they know what to do. And then, I think the other thing is you certainly want to be documenting anything related to role-based access control and access control in general, along with CUI flow control. So who's got access, what's accessible, and then even device control, right? We may not want people to be able to touch our source code from just any device. So we may want to have a separate group in Intune or a separate security group of people who are authorized to touch that code while nobody else has access to it. So remember, the golden rule is we want to be able to control who can access it, what device they can access, and then what they can, what the people can perform on those devices. That's kind of like the golden triad from section 3.1 when it comes to access control. So definitely some documentation on access control and who's allowed to do what, and well, who shouldn't be doing what. And then, honestly, I think there's a lot more documentation that could be required, but that begins to really boil down to the individual company that we're working with. Every company has a whole different set of documentation they have to produce. Um, it just varies, right? Some companies may have different systems that they're using and they may have to be secured in certain ways. And all of that you're going to have to be prepared to explain to an assessor in writing. So, what I would advocate is, especially if you've got any kind of custom system going on, listen, you're going to want to document how you are controlling the storage, processing, and transmission of CUI within any kind of a system that is custom, because an assessor won't understand that unless you document it for them. And anything that an assessor doesn't understand, they're going to go out of their way to try to poke holes in. And that's when problems really arise. So, yeah, I think really I can give you a couple of the basics, right? But I think, for most companies that are going to develop and run custom code, we'll probably really need to talk to those companies individually to truly understand the extent to which you've got to have documentation in order. But I think that's some good basics.
Absolutely. So while we usually try to finish off with a silly question that directly connects to their topic, and not to say this doesn't, because our main topic is about custom code for meeting CMMC requirements for custom code. This does have to do with CMMC. I just found this question to be funny, even though it doesn't mention custom code. So this week's silly question before we wrap this up is, what's harder, passing a CMMC audit or trying to explain cybersecurity to your grandma?
I think passing a CMMC certification is much harder. I uh I have the experience of having so I'll turn back the clock. So 23 years ago, showing my age, 23 years ago, On-Call started as an in-home break fix computer repair company, believe it or not. And I've dealt with a lot of grandmas. I would like to tell you, the audience, that I actually, in fact, am great with grandmas. Um, I have the patience of a saint, and I spent more than one working hour dealing with grandmas and grandpas that did not understand computers, even in the least. And I will tell you that I will take a grandma versus a cyber attack any day of the week. So, look, I think that a CMMC certification audit is freaking grueling and not very much fun. And you're under the gun to come up with evidence, and it's just an absolute nightmare. So, I think at the end of the day, bring me the grandmas, and I'm happy to come hang out with them and tell them all about FIPS 140-2 compliant encryption, how they can watch their favorite soap opera in Spanish using NordVPN, and all kinds of other really fun cybersecurity things that they don't care about. Not the least of which might be why the Prince of Nigeria wants to give them a castle in exchange for their AOL login. And for some reason, that castle is always just so incredibly intriguing to folks over the age of 70. They just can't help themselves. They just have to give their password away. So yeah, I'd rather deal with that all day long than deal with a CMMC certification. Again, we love helping people with CMMC certification in all seriousness, but if you're asking me which one is easier, bring on the grandmas.
I don't know, man. When I started working here, I was trying to explain my job to my 90-year-old grandmother, and at the end of the day, it ended up being, you know what? Computers. I work there. There's computers, and I'm involved. That's it. That's what I ended up telling her, and I was
That's
like,
fair.
well, she because she would not have understood had I told her all that on call does. Uh,
I
but
don't know if everybody has this hard of a time trying to explain what they do to people when they're like, "What do you do for work?" I'm like, "I'm in cyber defense," and they just kind of look at me. They go, "Okay, all right, yeah, whatever that is." Sounds nerdy to me. Um,
I usually start that when it's not a 90-year-old grandmother. I'm like, easy answer, and then I tell them. But and then if they push more, I'm like, okay, specifically, this is what we do.
yeah, it's always fun trying to explain to people what we do here. It's such a niche thing, but yet it's so needed in the world to try to keep U.S. defense contractors safe and secure. I always like to tell people that our company defends those who defends America, and they get real excited about that, and they kind of get it.
That's how you got me.
Absolutely.
On our first phone interview, I'm like, I'm in. But anyway,
That's right.
that
It's a great mission that we're on, and every
absolutely.
year it gets better. I actually just shot a video this morning for YouTube that was talking about a Redfin study that said that 56% of defense contractors feel completely unprepared. I remember back in 2019 there was an Inspector General report that had found that less than 1% of defense contractors were even aware that NIST SP 800-171 existed. I feel that we are making great progress towards securing America's defense industrial base. I think we're doing it. I think we're doing it in a good amount of time. In other words, um, when you really look at this thing, the law came out in 2017. It's not even 10 years later, and 44% of defense contractors at least are saying that they know about this thing, that they've taken steps toward being compliant, and that it's not quite so much of a mystery. Um, Look, I think maybe, our little YouTube channel might have had a little something to do with that, just a small fraction of that success. And we still have a long, long way to go, I'll tell you. So we'll keep the content coming and know that, our goal is 100% success. Nothing less than that is acceptable. We want to see America secured. I don't want to see another defense contractor ransomware by these evil people. And we will keep supporting that mission for as long as I live. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's what we do here at On Call. So, very proud to be a part of that mission, and very proud that we get to hang out and go do podcasts every week and YouTube videos, and give away the knowledge of how to get this done for free. And certainly, if you want our help and you want to see us hands on, we can definitely help with that. Just give us a call, and if it's a little question, no big deal. We're just going to answer it. Or if you just want us to come in and do this for you so it's done, as opposed to spending the next 6 to 24 months listening to podcasts like this and videos in my beautiful face telling you all about the very exciting subject of compliance. You know what? We can help with that too. Our amazing gap analysis and solution design program can take you very, very far in just a matter of days.
Just the other day, or just the other night, I was watching an old rerun of George Lopez. And for those who haven't seen it, in the show, George is the manager of an airplane parts factory. And they in the episode they had just won a defense contract making the landing gear for planes in the U.S. military. And I my first thought was, I wonder if they're compliant. Uh, so
Man, that's boy, do we have a lot of clients that that story rings true for. So
absolutely, absolutely. And that wraps up another great episode of Mission Compliance. We hope our discussion today has provided you with valuable insights, practical strategies, and inspiration to navigate the ever-evolving world of defense. We'd like to thank Mike for joining us and talking about the very important topic of being CMMC compliant when you're dealing with custom code, even if we did go on a bit of a tangent at the end there. Thanks, Mike.
hey, always a pleasure, Owen. I love going off on tangents with you, and sometimes we even get some good toppings there.
But the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics and connect with us via our social media channels. Share your thoughts, ask questions, and engage with fellow listeners using the hashtag Mission Compliance Podcast. If they haven't already, what should they do, Mike?
Well, sure, they should like, subscribe, and tell a friend about the channel. It's growing every week, and we love delivering this relevant information to you, the defense contractors who need to be secure so that you can carry out your own missions.
Yep. Hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform, and we truly appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review the show as well. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you thought provoking episodes and high quality content. Join us next time as we delve further into the dynamic world of defense, security, and industry innovation. Until then, take care, stay informed, and make compliance your mission. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.